on today's stage. The cat's eyes and the speed bumps, they certainly can get the attention of the riders, but otherwise it's not too bad in terms of road furniture, and that's something that makes this a thumbs up and another plus for the UAE Tour, this 8th edition of the event. Isaac Del Toro maintaining a position close to the head of affairs. And why wouldn't he? Important to be present. He's got the watts though. As I mentioned, national time trial champion of Mexico. There's Mexican involvement in the media corps here at this event as well. I think signaling the extra attention that he's getting from his fellow countrymen in a football-obsessed Mexico. They're turning their attention increasingly to the performances of this young tyro and this really exciting young talent that is Isaac Del Toro. So riders certainly crowded around the bumper of the race director's car. I think that's a signal that this could potentially be a busy start to the day. The usual pattern of the lesser lights teams pushing to get into an early breakaway. Well, that might not necessarily be maintained today. That tailwinds and the fact that it is start of the season for a lot of the riders. A fresh legs coming into this first of 7 stages in the UAE Tour means that a lot of riders, I think, will be peachy keen to see what they're capable of and ensure that they're present, all present and correct at the front of the race at the key moments. Interestingly enough, though, Fabio Jakobsen down the back of the field. He was infiltrated a front group in the first stage of the Lula Tour in Saudi Arabia in similar weather conditions just a few short weeks ago, and Fabio Jakobsen was an elite group of sprinters actually that broke free of the peloton and contested that stage when Jonathan Milan took the victory. Jakobsen didn't quite have the legs at the end of a hard day, but had done well to get in there. But at the moment, happy enough to tap along at the rear of the field, and maybe just feels that the weather conditions not conducive to splitting the field. Even if it does, I think certainly mean that we're going to have quite a fast start to the day. Through and past one of the few green areas hereabouts. Flag in, we're underway, and the start of the UAE Tour is, as expected, a fairly brisk one. And immediately, teams and riders piling to the front, and 42.5 kilometers of the day remaining. So I think we just pushed a little bit further through the start zone there. It was billed as a stage of 144 kilometers. We'll reduce that by 1.5 kilometers, and it changes nothing really. It's going to be a similar day out for the riders, and it is, as I say, the shortest road race stage of the week. The shortest stage, it comes tomorrow. It is the time trial, short time trial in and around Madinat Zayed. Oh, sorry, at Al Hudayriyat Island. Familiar to viewers of this race over recent years, that time trial. Remco Evenepoel and many others. There's a stacked time trial field in this one, actually. So that's going to be a mouth-watering and fascinating stage, and an important one for the GC contenders tomorrow to try and maybe gain time and not ship too much time to their GC rivals. That's tomorrow. Today, it's about making sure you're present at the front in all the right places. Just one non-starter to report, and unfortunately, Martin Buga from the Uno X squad has contracted some sort of a bug or something overnight, so he's not going to be able to take the start line today. So 145 riders representing 21 teams in the UAE Tour 2026. We're underway. Seems like a pretty good time to bring in my cohort for the week. Double British National Road Race champion Brian Smith is on hand to run the rule over the riders. And Brian, it's great to have you alongside again for second year in succession. And we know this stage from last year. We know what happened. We know how it can play out. But the wind is blowing a bit of a gale today. How much of a role is it going to play?
I think it'll play quite a considerable role today. I'm just a little bit worried over the last few years that we've used this cycle circuit. It is exposed. It does kind of throw a little bit of sand on. We saw last year in this stage that Pogacar was trying to kind of split things up and got a little bit animated. So that's the interest for me. Okay, we're going in the same direction for a considerable amount of time. The question for me was who was going to go in the breakaway. You can see this kind of sand, like I was saying, blowing across the road. It's the same on the cycle circuit as well. But the wind is coming, we see northwest, so it's coming from the right hand kind of hip of the riders, kind of throwing them over to the kind of left hand side at the moment. But it's predominantly a tailwind, which is going to help the speed. The speed is, we saw it right from the start, it was 56 kilometres an hour. The question for me is, normally in these sort of races, and it's a pity. I think it's the first year we've not seen some of the second division Italian teams here. They normally kind of animate the breakaway, get themselves up there, and that doesn't seem to be the case today, of course. But we do have 3 teams. Pinarello, Q36.5. We've got the new team of George Hincapie in here as well. Modern Adventure Pro Cycling, and you know, that the interest for me is with Tudor Pro Cycling, 3 teams invited to this race. So they would be the riders that would probably try and get in the breakaway, but as of yet, they've not tried.
Plenty of colour representation at the front at the moment, and riders tapping along at a pretty impressive rhythm. If you're new to watching cycling, the crosswind stages and the stages where the wind really blows are always fascinating, always interesting, always somewhat counterintuitive, really. You would imagine a tailwind is a great thing, isn't it? When you're out for a bike ride and you get that gust behind you, you think you're flying, don't you? Everyone's Merckx or Pogacar with the tailwind, but it's slightly different when you're in a big bunch. And almost counterintuitively, a tailwind, particularly a cross tailwind, can make things very challenging indeed for riders in there who maybe don't quite have the watts available. So the watts available from this facility are extraordinary to behold, aren't they? One of the world's biggest solar power stations, and I guess in this part of the world, that's exactly the kind of resource you want to recoup. But yeah, it's somewhat counterintuitive, but the tailwind, you just don't get anything like the same amount of shelter from the riders in front of you. You do get shelter, but not quite to the same extent. And a tail cross means everybody wants to move over to the opposite side of the road from whence the wind is coming. So the right-hand side of your picture there, up against that Armco barrier, that's the sweet spot. That's where people want to be, right at the front of the field.
Well, the thing is, Declan, when we arrived in Liwa last night, it was quite clear. And I thought for a moment I'm going to get some nice shots, some maybe pictures of the sand dunes and things like that just outside the hotel. And of course, no, I'll do it in the morning. In the morning we woke up and as you can clearly see, well, not clearly is probably not the word. It's a bit, you know, dusty, and you know, it wasn't clear this morning, and that's because the wind is blowing. It's kind of blowing up the sand.
Yes, the sandy haze.
Yeah,
it's
you cannot see too much in the distance. We did see a relatively nervy-ish start. You mentioned it. There's a lot of riders around the car, and that normally means that nerves. Of course, there's a lot of riders in here that are thinking of trying to win this stage, and I think Jonathan Milan, going in Howie Road in Saudi Arabia, I think has to be the favourite. He won it here last year, so I think he has to be the favourite here. So it was no surprise that Lido Trek were up towards the front, just kind of monitoring things, and maybe a few other teams. And they've probably been told at team meeting this morning, just make sure you're at the front and make sure if a breakaway does go, it's not a strong breakaway, because in this type of wind, kind of cross-tail wind, a breakaway could get a significant amount of time and only a short stage. So it's being controlled. But the surprise for me, I don't know how you feel about this, Declan, that I mentioned there's 3 second division teams. Pinarello, Q36.5, Tudor Pro Cycling, and of course the new kids on the block, Modern Adventure Pro Cycling. who rode tremendously well in the Alula Tour.
They were really present, weren't they? They were up for it, and they weren't cowed by the reputation of the other squads.
So, I was thinking, well, surely we're going to get somebody trying to infiltrate the breakaway. And what you do at the start of the race as a sports director, and you're taking that meeting, you know, everybody knows that the wind direction is a good direction for a breakaway. Okay, we go out towards the track. It's predominantly kind of tailish wind all the way to the cycle track. You do a couple of loops, and it's a bit more of a headwind back. But majority of the stage, you have to say today, and it's total opposite to last year, where we kind of block headwind out to Liwa. This we have a very fast. This is going to be run off very, very quickly. And normally when you get that, a tailwind tends to help a breakaway. So I'm a little bit surprised that nobody has tried.
Even if you're up the road and you're cannon fodder breakaway, if you get a minute or 2 minutes, if it splits behind, if the conditions are such that it splits behind, then you can be collected by the front half of the peloton, by the stronger riders, and that can be a ticket to stardom as well for those riders. So you would imagine that there's maybe even greater reason for showing a bit of ambition to get into an early move today.
There is normally the World Tour teams have got a plan, and I think with this being the first stage, the plan is to look after your sprinter. If you've got a sprinter, you look after the sprinter. But also for the GC contenders, you want to make it safe as possible for them, because you've got a time trial GC day tomorrow. And so if I was a GC contender, I'd be thinking, well, with the wind blowing, because it was blowing at the start, it's blowing here at the finish, a little bit nervy, I just want to have a safe stage. I don't want to maybe try anything. I know Pogacar tried to do a little bit on the circuit last year, but I just want to be safe through today's stage. So in the head of Evenepoel, who I think is one of the favourites for this race, just get through nice and safe, right? So and wait for the time trial tomorrow. You don't want any mishaps. For the sprinters, well, you know, this is their stage, and they'll want to, you know, to try and get something, because obviously tomorrow is a time trial stage. It's a chance not just to win the stage, but to take the first leader's jersey, of course. So I think a bit of nervy start. Everybody's got that plan in mind. The plan and the way that Tour Pro Cycling, I think Pinarello Q36.5, they ride like World Tour teams. Over the last kind of year, they ride as if they are a World Tour team. Yeah. So they've always got a plan, they've always got an outcome come the end. But the question for me, I go back to, is modern day cycling. It's probably the only team that maybe want to try and get in that breakaway, probably trying to get a jersey, maybe that. And we've seen it a couple of years ago with I'm going to say spot Scott here, because we have got two Scots in this race, but Mark Stewart got himself in the breakaway, got himself that black jersey. And normally in a race like this, if you get yourself in a breakaway, get sprint points, people tend to, right, just let them race for it. We're not really interested in that. And of course, we have got two sprints today, the first non-bonus, the second being a bonus sprint, but there's, you know, 8 points up for grabs in both of the sprints, so it's an opportunity to get a jersey. And Mark Stewart made it his own a couple of years ago. Last year we had a great battle between Solution Tech and Bardiani. That was fantastic. I loved watching that, but unfortunately we don't have these Italian teams here this year. I
mean, it's a good point. The women's equivalent event, of course, which was on last week, we did have a scrap between two continental level Italian squads for that intermediate sprints jersey, and there was a little bit of FDJ involvement as well in that particular scrap. But you did have the third division squads pushing hard. We've got three second division teams, and as you mentioned, Modern Adventure Pro Cycling, they're the new kids on the block. Bobby Julik's squad from the United States of America, but with their Scottish representative, Mark Stewart. Yeah, we'll see whether he shows his wants to stick his nose out front of this peloton, and maybe it's a trip to superstardom for him, because he made the most of that, his visits to the break a couple of years ago. So we pick up Nick Sikowski, then on board and showing the value of these cameras, the Pinarello Q36.5 Pro Cycling team. But those three, there's Sikowski there, just you can see that white camera underneath his saddle.
The thing you have to understand, Declan, is, you know, as you look down the road, because if you're going for a kind of sprint jersey, where can I get the points, and, you know, getting in a breakaway, apart from the two kind of mountain stages, and you've got two mountains at the end, this race is flat. You know what I mean? So it's not as if you're going to have kind of hard up and down all day with a mountain top finish. We've got 2 hockey stick days, which is the climbs at the end. Okay, we've got a new climb which looks quite brutal.
It's a tougher climb, isn't it? The Jebel Jais.
Yeah, very much so.
We always Jebel Hafid. Oh, and Sylvain Dillier's decided that quite enough of that. We did see him on the bumper of the lead car at the start and chatting away with. I do believe it was Durbridge actually at the start of the stage, just to see what the plan might turn out to be.
I think he's just training for Milan San Remo. That's what he does. Well, rides on the front all day.
He did
about too slow, lads. I need to go.
He did about 250 kilometres on the front of Milan San Remo last year, didn't he? It was a really impressive early break. But Andillier, of course, has made a career out of this. The former Swiss champion, not difficult to pick out, is he, for the Alpecin de Koning squad, Alpecin Premier Tech, I should say. New names to get the hang of, slightly different colours, but familiar figure of Sylvain Dillier for the Alpecin Premier Tech squad here. They've got a couple of options for the sprint at the end of the day, and you sort of think that the crosswinds and the sprints are where they're focused this week. Simon de Haas, the Belgian rider, got a nice stage win in Tour of Turkey last year, so maybe they're trying to see if they can set him up today. But I suppose attack is the best form of defence here. Put yourself in prime position. Yeah,
well, just look to the left. You see is it maroon jerseys of Modern Adventure, and I think they'll be thinking about it because I think everybody knows what Sylvain Dillier is capable of. Like he just said, Milan San Remo, he's just riding on the front. That's what he does. Just crunches the numbers out, and you know, he can go all day. A great rider. If you were to pick out one of the riders in this peloton that, I tell you what, I want to get in a breakaway, but I want him with me.
Yeah.
He's one of these type of riders. So
massive engine, go all
exactly,
day. Yeah.
Just go all day. And like I was saying, I think it's very important for a team like Modern Day Adventure Pro Cycling to try and get in the breakaway, try and get maybe that black jersey. They might be thinking of coming here looking for a top 10 overall, or you know, something else in the race. Of course,
Stefan de Bod actually was really impressive.
He was up there in Alula, what was it, 4th? Yeah. He was in Alula Tour quite recently. So they've got a good team. So maybe they are coming into it thinking, as a second division team, we mentioned at Tour Pro Cycling, Pinarello Q36.5, they ride as World Tour teams, although they're not. Maybe they're riding as a World Tour team. We're coming here not to make up the numbers, not to go for the minor competitions, but to be in the race, get a top 10, you know, really go for it. They don't have an out-and-out kind of sprinter. They've got Riley Pickerel that can sprint well enough. You know, he's a good top 10er. And if that's their goals, they hit them in a Lula Tour. That might be the goals here. But I think for Sylvain Dillier, he just wants to get involved with the racing. He doesn't want to have it easy. Of course, the GC contenders won at an easy stage today, but it's just, I know that if I was in that peloton, I didn't, you know, not GC contender sprinter, and you've got to say that although you have already mentioned the fact that De Haers is up there, Gerben Tyson is there, even Florian Seneschal can sprint in his day, and Ricard is also there, but all due respect to these guys, they're probably not the favourites for today's stage, and they just want to get themselves in the mix and make it as hard as possible. No one's joined Sylvain Dillier at the moment, but I'm pretty sure.
Is he going to be annoyed by that?
As we said, he's quite used to riding, you know, on his own at the front and things like that. But I would think that, yeah, you would want somebody to be in front. You know, what's he going to get out from today? I think he just wanted to kind of spice it up a little bit and not ride in the peloton today.
Well, you're not far from a shopping mall in a general sense when you're in around Abu Dhabi city centre and out into the countryside as well. Plenty of opportunities. Wrestling in Madinat Zayed, part of the old Dhafar region. Yeah, should look it up actually. Milan San Remo last year. Primavera beckons, of course.
Do you know, I was there, and Matthew van der Poel he was going to the podium or just finished the podium. Sylvain Dillier came down the finishing straight probably about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more afterwards. And his first thought was he went straight into the compound where the podiums were and went straight to Matthew van der Poel. He put his both hands round him and gave him a big hug. that's what he did. He rode for him all day. He delivered the goods, and Sylvain Dillé's mind and thoughts was going to say congratulations to the man I worked for all day. It wasn't a case of just get to the finish and, you know, get to the team bus, get a shower. It was like get straight to
that thing I did. You made it more valuable by winning at the end.
Well, he got his wee moment with Van der Poel because he'd kind of paved the way for him.
Yeah, Dillier up front in the break all day last year at Milan-San Remo in early March. A little way to go before we get there, but not too far. And useful hit out here for Sylvain Dillier, former second place finisher, of course, in Paris-Roubaix. Meanwhile, tapping along the bunch, pretty happy about things. Actually, the first 10K they covered, I mean, it was about 50 kilometres an hour in the first 10 kilometres. There's Josh Tarling, for whom 50 kilometres an hour is
yesterday.
Well, happy birthday to Josh Tarling, and he'll be looking forward to tomorrow's stage, I think. Familiar ground for him. Time trial superstar, one of the few people that can make Remco Evenepoel even remotely nervous in a time trial. Evenepoel, of course, the national European and world champion in the race against the watch, and Josh Tarling, I think, certainly capable of unseating the world champion from his situation at the top of the time trial pile in tomorrow's run. But he'll want to stay out of trouble, stay close to the front. But yeah, they were riding along at 50 kilometres an hour for that first 10K. Dillier's headed north, and they've given him 43 seconds, but they haven't exactly. I mean, it's just a relatively easy 50k an hour. It just gives you a sense of just how impressive these riders are. Of course, we saw a recent Strava file from Tadej Pogacar. He's happy enough to put everything up on Strava, isn't he? And it revealed that he'd done, what was it, 4 or 5 hours at 44 kilometres an hour or something like that.
I think it was more. I think it was 45 average.
Very incredible. Yeah.
You know, you got to remember that
threshold, I think 450 watts or something.
They raced at that sort of level, you know, average speed. I can remember even back to the World Championships around Benidorm. He must have, I think, he went in the one direction. I think he did to Valencia, and he maybe had a bit of the aid of the
tailwind,
the wind.
Well,
but you know, back in my day, riding the World Championships over what 260 odd kilometres, you know, we were averaging just over 40 kilometres an hour. On average, a World Tour race is averaging what, 43 there and thereabouts, but to average that on your own, it's
not bad.
Quite a lot.
Yeah. Sylvain Dillier, maybe not quite on that level, but not as far off it as you might imagine. And he's going to see if he can replicate that kind of performance. Pan flat, as we say today, apart from that tiny little ramp up to the finish line, which proved challenging.
The cycle set is just undulating as well. It's not flat. It's
right.
A couple of wee lumps on it. But yeah, we'll have to kind of wait and see until we get there. It's the only, I think it. If I was putting a kind of red point on today's circuit, today's route, I would highlight this cycle circuit, because we go around it, and because of the winds, there will be a certain element of you know, side winds.
Through the Tropic of Cancer, which took us through to our hotel last night.
And as a Cancerian, I quite like that.
Yeah. We're flashing past at such a rate, we didn't get a chance for a selfie there this year. It's the Northern Tropic. Marks the northernmost latitude where the sun can be directly overhead, which happens, of course, during the June solstice. And the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun to its fullest extent, of course.
You've got to start talking about Stonehenge now.
Too many stones out there, are they? It's not difficult. It's not easy to make it out of sand.
Yeah, that's what you have to be aware of. On the circuit, it's the sand that blows onto it, and yeah, you have to watch the rocks that are kind of thrown onto the road here. Of course, we've got great conditions here. I'd say yesterday was what, 32 degrees. Today 28 degrees, a little bit cooler, and you know, it's a little bit windier as well. So you know, you just have to be aware of any kind of rocks that have, or small kind of stones that are thrown onto the road. But in general, the road conditions are very, very good.
Well, what about that? That is really impressive stuff. Sylvain Dillier is tapping out. I mean, you got to have a big gear on your bike to manage 66 kilometers an hour. And the peloton aren't exactly hanging around at 51 kilometers an hour. It gives you a sense of just how the level of impetus they're getting from the breeze, because they're far from fully on it, so that main peloton at the moment. And Dillier is pushing hard to try and open up as much of an advantage as he can possibly get before he reaches the point at which he starts to, you know, arrive onto the cycle track and then ultimately turn around and go back. So it's set to press on, wants to take as much as he possibly can out of this one. The merest hint of a rise in the road, and his speed just ramps back to 60 kilometers an hour. And I think it's great to have that bit of data, isn't it? Because you're looking with the head-on shot, you just don't get a sense of just how fast he's going. But this is, I mean, twice as fast as a club ride, isn't it? It's just incredibly impressive.
We do say it's a flat stage today, and looking at the profile, it is predominantly flat. But I ran the last few kilometers this morning. It's not. When you're running up a small drag like this, you feel it. Well, I do anyway. But I'm just thinking that, you know, a lot of these riders, they won't even feel these kind of small up and downs. But it's, you know, we are saying it's, you know, flat predominantly, but you do have these kind of small undulations. Like your question earlier, Declan, will he be worried? Well, yes, it would be nice to have maybe a little bit of company, but I don't think he's worried too much about it, because he's quite used to kind of riding on the front, and he doesn't have that long to go as well. It's only got 121 kilometres, and a lot of that is going to tailwind. It's when we come through Liwa, through the first sprints, and start to head towards the circuit and back around, that's where he gets a little bit of kind of headwind. But was this a plan? We will never know until we talk to the team whether, you know, it was a plan for them to be in this breakaway. They do have a couple of decent finishers that can feature in the end, but I think this man here, he's got a job to do. I think they have got the ultimate favourite of today's stage, Jonathan Milan.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, incentive for Emmanuel Gebrek-Zabir and his teammates to support Jonathan Milan. Ben Hamouda, a important auto company, distributor of Chevrolet vehicles hereabouts, and sponsors, of course, of today's stage. And indeed, all of the cavalcade supplied with Chevrolet vehicles, and indeed ourselves as well, and all of the infrastructure and race organisers and fine vehicles they are indeed. And what an amazing piece of logistical support it is, of course, because there's some way distance as we are from the service courses of the race teams. It's important that they are able to access vehicles down here rather than having to transport all of those vehicles all the way to the Middle East. A much better solution is to get these vehicles. It's unfamiliar, of course, but it doesn't take long to get the hang of them, and they are absolutely ideal for the job. And it has to be said, this part of the world, Chevrolet is an important brand. Lots and lots of American-themed vehicles, and definitely a different look to the sort of cars that you see out on the road. Lots more SUVs than you would see in where I'm from, in Western Europe, and lots of pickup trucks as well. Vast pickup truck that was being driven by the person that gave me our vehicle yesterday. And the cavalcade makes for an impressive sight. All the colour and pageantry of World Tour cycling and on the roads of Al Dhafra today.
Yeah, but logistics have gone into this one. 2 team cars. You can see all the team cars at the front have got you know, full complement of bikes. The kind of breakaway cars at the back have got, you know, just a couple of bikes. So to come here, you know, the excess luggage and things like that, it's a bit of planning. I've been there myself, planning for the Tour Down Under and, you know, the Middle Eastern races. It's yeah, it can be a nightmare, and that's where your staff come in, you know, at airports and carting around boxes and boxes and boxes. It's not easy to transport all this. Of course, when they get here, they've been given vehicles, but, you know, everybody's coming here, and of course, most will have a spare bike, just with one spare bike, but, you know, you have to be kind of skeleton equipment and things like that, because they're given an allowance.
Throw in a time trial as well, and I mean, it's a time trial on time trial bikes sometimes when we go to sort of far-flung parts of the world, or at least for most of the teams who are almost without exception here based in Europe. Even the Modern Adventure Pro Cycling team will have a base in Europe, you know, from whence they will sort of move out to all the races. But this one's a little bit further afield, and they put a time trial in here, which I think is really important for this race. 2 hilly stages, a time trial, and then 4 stages which are, ostensibly for the sprinters. We'll see if that works out. Sylvain Dillier has a different plan, but they have to bring the time trial bikes and equipment here, and that adds another little headache. And I mean, it's increasingly we're seeing a trend where they're introducing, particularly the women's peloton, they'll introduce road bike time trials, which I think is an interesting approach. Certainly, it's something that's time trialing. I mean, you're British, so you understand how important time trialing is in an amateur sense in that part of the world, and it's got a recent revival because they've introduced a category for road bikes, and so it means that people don't have to get another bike and all the extra equipment and head to wind tunnels.
Logistically, it does happen. I know that in the early days of Tour of Qatar, it was normal bikes, but I'm really for, if it's a time trial, then I want to see all the gadgets, all the modern time trial bikes and things like that. And it's the same for the bicycle manufacturers. That's why they make them, and they sell these bikes, and it's important for them to be on time trial bikes for time trials. I know that sometimes, and they had it in Valencia this year, where
Remco,
it was more for safety purpose than anything else with the wind. As everybody knows, that aerodynamic bikes in winds, it's a little bit more danger. So yeah, I think if you've got a time trial on a race, it's nice to see everybody kitted out accordingly. Although there is a slight difference between a road suit and a time trial suit. Very little, but everybody's looking now, and I know that they've banned the aero helmets in road racing now, but it was getting to the point where a lot of these kind of aero advantages that they've got in time trials were coming onto the roads, and I think the UCI just decided, right, slow down here, we have to have kind of rules in place.
Yeah, the big old time trial helmets. One thing they did away with was the visor over the helmet, and so you can have sunglasses, but you can't have a visor. Many other rules have come into place as well. A restriction on the minimum width of handlebars as well, introduced this season.
See, I don't think it affects. I do a bit of bike fitting back home, and I don't think it has affected or will affect any of the kind of male riders. But I think for the female riders, because I'm measuring shoulders and bars in my bike fitting, and some females only 34
with shoulders,
with shoulders, and they have got to have a minimum size of bar, of course.
Well, they set it at 38 centimeters, which I mean, it's narrow compared to when you were racing. I guess it was probably 44s, 42, 44s.
Yeah, an average 40. It went up to 42 and 40. But I would say the average female was around about 36.
But it was getting down to 34s and even narrower for the Jan Willem van Schips and guys like that, and that was potentially.
It was getting dangerous. I totally agree with that. It's the same with track sprinters. You only have to touch them, and the wobble. I think that has caused a few crashes in the pro peloton and the narrow bars. I think the speed of the bikes and not having complete control with narrow bars. It's all about aerodynamics, and I know that some people come to me and say, "Well, I'm struggling to go downhill." When I look at it, they've got 36 bars and the levers are turned in, and I said, "Well, that's not helping you as well." So people are saying to me, I'm kind of wobbling a bit as I'm going downhill because you don't have control of the bike.
Yeah.
So I think the UCI are right, but I think there needs to be a rule for female and a rule for male.
Based on morphology, if nothing else.
Yeah,
I mean, based on your actual physics. And that's something that happened in time trialing, didn't it, within the last 15 years. It's not that long ago, less than 10 years, since very, very tall and accomplished time trialists were hugely compromised by the rules because they were having to sort of fold themselves into a very, very small position to try and meet the regulations around the maximum length that their bar extensions could be.
Well, I worked with someone that was 190 was the limit centimetres, and if you were 189
great
to 191, there was a difference of 5 centimetres, so that's huge. So how they came up with
they were putting them on a rack in the morning to meet the 190. Yeah,
well, I had a rider, Steve Cummings, the now sports director for Jayco Alula, before the Tirreno time trial. He was registered at 190. And on the day of the time trial, the final time trial, as everybody knows, as you get through a stage race, you lose a little bit of height, and during the day you lose a little bit of height. So he was measured at 189. So we did try and put him on the rack to try and stretch him out a little bit. He never made it, and we had to change his time trial position.
Ouch.
And he was going to do a top 10 performance, and the UCI said nope. That kind of 1 centimetre made a 5 centimetre difference in his length of his time trial bike.
Average speed so far, as you can see, is a fairly brisk one. That will be tempered somewhat by the headwind that they will hit, but the net advantage is a tailwind for most of the day today, so they will have a fairly fast average speed, and it's a decent advantage that has been. I mean, the average speed, of course, is for the leader of the race at the moment. That's Sylvain Dillier, who has almost 2 minutes advantage on the peloton. Brisk progress across the tarmac from the peloton. Their average speed is still north of 52 kilometers an hour, would have imagined. There's certainly 50, and there you go. Tim Merlier won into the bin Mohammed Smart University at Dubai at over 48.5 kilometers per hour, which was
not as fast as Pogacar on his train ride.
Yeah, another record for Tadej Pogacar to aim for.
He's not even here, we're talking about him.
I know, he dominates world cycling, doesn't he? But the UAE Team Emirates squad, home squad, of course, a huge ambition for this event. And Pogacar, 3-time winner in the 7 editions held so far, will, I think, be content, as indeed will the rest of the squad, that they have a very, very strong outfit. And the Visma Lease bike squad, no Jonas Vingegaard either, unfortunately injured at the moment. Slightly sort of surprising situation, wasn't it? He was being shadowed down at descent and training, and by
Did you see
amateur.
that?
I didn't actually see it, but I've read all about it, and I've certainly...
It's about more than 50 metres behind him.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but when you go out for a bike ride and someone rides up behind you, does it stress you?
Some it does. I didn't let it bother me, but for a lot of these kind of top riders, it obviously did. He was riding down this descent. He was actually kind of almost off the descent. The Spanish rider was riding at least 50 metres behind him, and then all of a sudden he was trying to take this video and put it down to the numbers on his head unit to show how fast it was going, and all of a sudden on the right hand side of the roads, Vingegaard went over the left-hand barrier on a slight right-hand corner. He went over the ankle barrier. So what happened there, I don't know. I think it was no fault of the rider that was riding behind him.
Right, he was at a respectful distance as well.
Yes, that's what I seen the video of. And something's happened, and he's hit the barrier and went over in a slight right-hand corner.
And then the criticism is for the rider who was behind him. It'd be a different thing, I think, if he was overtaken on the descent and was then doing something that was a little bit dangerous to try and stay there. Yeah.
And right behind the rider, I don't think he was. For me, looking at that video, the rider had no blame at all. All the blame was in Jonas Vingegaard.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, it's a conversation that's kind of flared up a little bit, isn't it, in recent weeks, is the etiquette of if you're passed by someone out training, do you sit on? If you catch them, do you ride behind them? I mean, I've always kind of been of a view, if that situation occurs for me out for a bike ride, then I'll always say hello. I'll always say hello to the person.
But as a fan, if Pogacar passed you and you could and capable of sitting on his wheel, you would, well, because that's bragging rights.
Yeah. But it's nonsense, really, isn't it? Because Pogacar could be on a cafe ride, and the amateurs could be to the pin of his collar just to hang on. And you know, it is an amazingly accessible sport that we can get as close to the superstars, because you don't get anywhere near to Cristiano Ronaldo when he's when he's training for his soccer matches. So I have to say, we need to be respectful, and it's something that Tadej Pogacar has spoken about himself in recent days as well, because I think he had a particularly aggressive fan situation where someone was trying to get a selfie with him and it wasn't really taking no for an answer and was a little bit...
Yeah, he said wait a couple of minutes and he didn't. Yeah, so you got to give the riders...
And he's very accessible. I have to say, he's very generous with his time.
He is. Like you say, we are free to view sport at the side of the roads. We can get really close access. The riders have to train in open roads. It's not as if they go to a closed circuit. Not like you've got stadiums and things like that on training venues. We don't have that. So it's more and more. You go to, you know, just outside Benidorm, Calpe, things like that, and you see the groups riding by with, you know, 5 or 6 or even more amateur riders trying to kind of ride with them. What do you do as team manager? You know, you just have to hope that they've got a little bit of respect and don't get involved, because the last thing you want is an accident by one of these riders trying to take a selfie. That is the danger. When riders come up alongside or they're trying to take a selfie, and some of them are on the opposite side of the road, it's a little bit dangerous taking selfies and doing all this sort of stuff. And so as an ex-manager, that's my only concern.
So it's the smartphone generation has kind of skewed this and changed the experience.
Would I have any problems about amateur riders riding at the back of the group, as long as they don't interfere? The last thing you want to do, and I've seen it happen, is the car goes up and says, guys, get out the way, and I have to say that there's no law that says they cannot do that. Yeah. So if they show respect, then fine.
Yeah.
But like you say, it's amateurs don't go into football parks and kick a ball about with Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, I mean, what a privilege, you know, to be anywhere closer, to even ride the same roads, to get a sense of the scale of difference, of gulf between, you know, an average club rider and the superstars of the World Tour peloton, who are cruising along well north of 50 kilometers an hour, still not quite on the pace of Sylvain Dillier up front.
Got a car park and a helicopter pad.
Too many helicopters at our hotel last night. Yeah, he's picked up a rear wheel puncture, hasn't he? I mean, it is very often, of course, it's got that milk in the tyre, so those punctures can repair themselves quite quickly. Interesting that he's gone for, even though he's in the break here, he's gone for a rear wheel change, and we saw that a lot actually in the women's race last week, and it is something that's happening, I think, increasingly in the men's race. They can make those changes quickly, but he's leaking a bit more time. Would a bike change have been a better prospect here, or is it not just a bike specifically for him?
So if you're going for a stage like today, in that sort of situation, I don't think he's got a spare bike in that car.
And I have to say, that was as good a rear wheel change as you're going to get. That was really, really ace top spanner work there by that mechanic to be able to service Sylvain Dillier. I would imagine maximum loss here. Well, he probably lost a second or two with the rear wheel puncture and the kilometre before they had to go and make that change.
Well,
then he lost, what, 20 seconds?
He got a little bit of rest, 20 seconds rest.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he can go again. So that's, you know, that's okay. I don't think the peloton are too worried about him. They're not really going to chase him down. He may have lost 20-30 seconds, but he's got 20-30 seconds you know, rest as well. But the 3 bikes, I very much doubt, you know, I'm trying to look at the size of the bikes at the moment. I think they would have probably changed bikes if they had, but they don't. Like I was saying before, the main car has got all the bikes, spare bikes, and the breakaway car is the second car who goes up to service the breakaway, and they've got minimum 2 or 3 bikes.
Yes.
And when you've got a team of 7 riders, does Sylvain Dillier have that spare bike? So I don't think he has. So I don't think he had that option, and the only opportunity was to change the wheel.
It's a big World Tour race, though. I mean, that rack is capable of taking more bikes. Is it a surprise that we're not seeing, you know, that I've seen Premier Tech aren't capable of sending limited?
You've got limited, and I know that, you know, there's a lot of big budget teams and things like that, but you're limited with how many kilos, extra kilos you can bring to this race. That's an allocation, and you know, if you want to increase that allocation, as you know, you fly, if you're extra kilos, it costs you a lot of money, and that accumulates throughout the season if you're doing that all the time. But I would say maybe there's 1 or 2 teams with full complements, you know, 2 cars with you know, 7 bikes on top of each one. But by the looks of things in the cavalcade we saw earlier on today, that the front car has got all 7 bikes for each rider, but unfortunately the back only have 2 or 3.
Well, net loss maybe 30 seconds. Yeah, about 30 seconds, isn't it? It's up to 2 quarter minutes. Maybe 20 or 22, something like that. So yeah, the net effect, not too much damage there for Sylvain Dillier. Not a protected rider, as you would expect, but certainly a very well respected one, and a sort of one of the breakaway specialists, solo breakaway specialists, the Swiss rider, obviously in Premier Tech squad. Coming up on the first third of racing completed. Just over 40k in their legs at this point, and a lot less than an hour of racing. A lot less than an hour of racing. Rolled out at 1 o'clock, wasn't it? And we are 53 minutes, but of course with 2.5 kilometers of a rollout, a little bit longer than that. So probably racing now for about 45, 47 minutes, something like that. And the team's starting to assemble, and this looks a little bit more aggressive, and it's going to be interesting to see what this is going to do to the advantage of Sylvain Dillier, because just a sense that they've all moved up. Is there a feeling that something might be about to happen here?
Well, there's no real reason for that to happen. It's just a case of what the sports directors want, Declan. We aren't too far away from, heading through Liwa itself, so we're getting there. So it's yeah, we still got a long way to go in this, but the direction coming from the team cars behind, it's a lot of the time it's all about safety. Keep a rider towards the front, and of course, unless you've got an experienced rider that will say to the guys, well, we don't have to ride this fast. When you come to the front as a team riding, you see Lotto Intermarché on the right here, and Herrigod's here for a UAE Team Emirates. They push each other on. Sometimes a rider will say, look, settle down for rival teams, but when you come up and you're challenged, it's a little bit when you're in a club run and you ride 2 up and you ride with someone and he sits just in front of you, half-wheeling as they call it, and then you try and go level with him, and then he goes, and it's a little bit like that at the front sometimes. Everybody's like trying to kind of half-wheel, trying to be there, and at the end of the day, the riders at the back are just go, well, I'm just going to have an easy day.
Welcome to the 500 watts World Tour half-wheeling championships here on stage 1 of the UAE Tour. Finn Fisher-Black just staying out of trouble in new colours this year. Second on a stage of Tour Down Under, could be an interesting one, I think, for the overall this week. National Time Trial Champion of New Zealand, recently crowned indeed, and Finn Fisher-Black one to watch out for, in support, of course, this week of Remco Evenepoel.
Well, just to give you his full name, and he might be a little bit cunning this week. His full name is Finn Lachlan Fox Fisher-Black.
Might be a little bit of Scottish in there. Yeah.
So cunning as a fox.
And happy enough to tap along the wheels alongside his Australian teammate, Jared Dreismers, down the back of the field as the peloton makes their way. And I mean, I think part of the fact that we're seeing a change in the front of the peloton, gap coming down, continuing to come down, but not by as much as you might imagine, is, as I say, the impending arrival onto that circuit. Chevrolets in the main peloton behind at the moment, are in the cavalcade, I should say, and Sylvain Dillier happy enough to have got service and resumed, and the rocking of the shoulders and the flexing of the muscles in his forearms telling you that he is fully committed to this at the moment. I think he's probably got the message behind that they're assembling in colour order. The net effect of that is that the pace is rising in the peloton, as a result of which his advantage, his hard-won advantage, could be under threat here. He wants to try and take as much as he possibly can into this circuit. We're not that far, actually, from the point where we pass the road, the kilometre-to-go point, the road that will take them up to the finish line at the Liwa Palace. He'll go flashing past through a series of roundabouts and out onto the circuit with the bike track out into the sand dunes, the desert area here at Liwa. Extraordinary topography, amazing geology, and a wonderful location. Sensational. I mean, it really is an extraordinary location, I think, for a bike path. I think it's an absolutely perfect place to go bike racing today. That peloton huddled and compact at the moment. 144 riders in there. Well, there you go. There's a sort of an indication of how it's not absolutely pan-flat, is it? I mean, it's by no means mountainous, but it is just a little bit lumpy. And we saw last year it just tempted Tadej Pogačar and others into a little bit of attacking to try and see if they could unseat some of the sprinters. Jonathan Milan and friends equal to that challenge, but don't be surprised if it happens again today. Felix Gall, another one to watch out for, the Austrian climber, Grand Tour stage winner. On his performed with great distinction in both Tour de France and Giro d'Italia in recent seasons. The Decathlon squad have a pretty good option with him for the overall. What are they going to do about sprinting today? Case Ball among their number. Gianluca Poliflite as well has produced one or two decent results, but you would imagine they'll be all about trying to protect Felix Gall as best they can. And Stefan Bissiger, I think, will be looking to target the day 2 time trial, and he'll also be asked to do a lot of work to maintain the pace and control the pace for Felix Gall and others close to the front. And look at this, your drag race and the half-wheeling World Championships at the moment being won by the Astana squad, Visma Lease bike.
Yeah, we need a photo finish for that one. Yeah, it's very difficult to see that. Look, there's no real, there's a clear split in the peloton. But the thing is, there's no real point of doing this. You know, you're just using up a little bit of energy for some of your teammates. So, you know, I'd be more inclined to just make sure that, you know, you stay safe. It's a big wide road. Okay, there's 21 teams. It's not a sizable peloton. It's nice and safe-ish. Of course, you don't want to take any chances, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the team orders are team orders. I think they're still a little bit worried about, you know, the winds and, you know, what the stage is going to produce. You know, we do have the first sprint coming up shortly as well. That is just 4 points. Does look as if Sylvain Delahaye is going to take the maximum points there. Whether he can stay away to the next one and take that, you know, sprint jersey, I don't think that's in his mind at the start of the stage.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we're about 7K now to the first of our 2 intermediate sprints today. For the first one, no bonus seconds on the line. So the GC contenders are unlikely to poke their nose into the wind. They'll want to be represented up front, and Delahaye fully invested here and desperate, I think, to cling on to as much of his advantage. I think comfortably uncomfortable in the knowledge that he will be going back to that peloton, you feel, but he's hoping that it's a much reduced group that will be the first to gather him up on the road as we race through an opportunity to service the riders. But it's one of those situations, isn't it? This particular race is really, really challenging for those team helpers to try and distribute bottles and bags. And well, Sylvain Delahaye not of a mind to take service from the side of the road at the moment, because he's got to go absolutely flat chat.
Well, he's got bar service right behind him, so if he just puts his hand up, car's there, and car's got everything in it, so there's no real point to grab a bottle from the side or a musette. Of course, in the peloton, you know, you have to do these things, but for Sylvain Delahaye, you know, you've got that luxury. We say it all the time, sometimes in, you know, big races, that you get yourself in the breakaway. If it's a breakaway 5-6 riders, you have got that luxury. Well, you know, back in the peloton, you have to kind of battle, and there's not a kind of queue to get get your car up. So you put your hand up for service, go back for bottle. So you have to go all the way back to the back of the peloton, behind the commissaire's car, grab your whatever musette, bottles and things like that, and then take them back up. So there's a little bit of energy in doing that, and of course, as soon as you put your hand up, your car's called, and then someone else puts, and there's a bit of, you know, hierarchy, and you have to, you know, respect who came first and things like that. So it's not a case of put your hand up, you know, you just get your bar service there and then. It's, you have to kind of wait a little bit longer, and it takes a little bit more energy. But the luxury of getting himself in the breakaway, especially as a lone rider, just raise a hand and it's there on service. So he's got 5-star service, where the peloton might only have 2 or 3.
Yeah, net advantage. Well, one advantage, isn't it, for your man out front, our breakaway rider, Sylvain Dillier. Of course, the negative side of things is that there are so many different resources behind to chase him. A little bit of a slowing of the pace in that main peloton to take on Bottles and Musettes might just add a second or two to the lead of Sylvain Dillier, and that'll be welcome. Gabriel Xavier dutifully cruising across, but sure he managed to get a bag there.
Yeah, I think he went for a bottle, but
of course for the Lidl Treks they've got bespoke bottles, haven't they? They've got those aerodynamic bottles, very specific bottle cages.
But they can get in normal bottles as well, so they don't have to have their own bottles. It accommodates for other bottles, but there's always that little bit of kind of hidden danger in a feed station. Spot the Irishman. Yeah,
it's Eddie Dunbar down at the laughing end of the peloton. He's not laughing at the moment. Did miss a couple of key splits actually in the Alula Tour as well. Man to watch out for on the mountain stages and stages 3 and 6. The Jebel Mobra and Jebel Hafid stages, and 7th place finisher in Giro d'Italia, stage winner of course in the Vuelta a España a few years ago. Eddie Dunbar will be hoping to get through this one, that the crosswinds don't have any negative impact on his advantage.
Yeah, I think for a lot of the riders, and you know, it'd be nice to see that Eddie Dunbar trying to go for the overall. There's some really good contenders here, so we'll see what develops over the course of this race.
So showing at 1:44 at the moment for Sylvain Dillier. He's absolutely piling on the coals here, and hoping against hope that he can hang on for as long as possible and open up as much of an advantage and just test and challenge this peloton in the closing stages of the day.
Bit of a sandcastle.
I mean, yeah, you would be out with your bucket and spade for a long time to create that one, wouldn't you? 2.5 to the sprint. Dillier cruising along, stage winner in Giro d'Italia back as far back as 2017 now. He's 35 actually. He's a long and storied career. Spent a lot of it with the BMC squad and home roads in Switzerland. BMC team, and then it was a few Swiss riders ended up actually in the UAE Tour and Mondial squad as they were then. And back in 2021 moved across to the Alpecin Phoenix squad, which is now of course Alpecin Premier Tech. The riders in the peloton seem unconcerned, unperturbed at the moment. That's where we're headed eventually. Sylvain Dillier not stopping to look at what awaits at the end of this stage. That's the Liwa Palace, an imposing sight, looming large over this. There aren't too many high points around this countryside, so any sort of a hill offers an extended view. Flashing past through the roundabouts and off out for what awaits.
Liwa.
Cruising through to take the 8, the intermediate sprints classification, of course, for that black jersey, and will be something that Silvandilia won't have been thinking about too hard at the beginning of the week.
I don't think he would have thought too much about it. I think the opportunity came. He decided that, you know, he wants to race it. Now, just give you an indication of where we are at the moment. Just coming up to the first sprint of the day. The finish, we've just saw where we're finishing up at the Liwa Pal, was becoming the opposite direction, the left-hand side of the road, and up towards the finish. So Sylvain Daly in the first sprint of this year's race will take maximum points of 8. What will be interesting now, Declan, is to see who will take the other points, because I think that's all there is left. So if you're interested in that sprint jersey, you know, do you want some points? And we'll see it in the peloton. Somebody that's maybe thinking down the line, maybe get themselves in a breakaway. These are quite easy points to take if you're looking for the, you know, the sprint jersey in this race. And you know, let's see who wants to take the rest of the points that are up for grabs.
Now, is there going to be any sort of an investment here? The modern Adventure Pro Cycling squad, noticeable on the left-hand side of the road, but they have, a bit like Tudor Pro Cycling, have taken a view that even though they're at a lower budget and lower level of racing, just coming in as the new boys on the track, but they've decided that they're going to not be in any way embarrassed or afraid to get involved in the racing, and they've showed willing to be up front. They're certainly in evidence, but now starting to get a little bit swamped as the Ineos Grenadiers squad move up and around the outside. Ineos squad, new colours. It's going to be tough to pick that one out, I tell you what. I mean, that was just a blanket, absolutely no contest whatsoever. Del Toro back in the cars at the moment. Isaac Del Toro happy enough to do his own work and go back to the team car for a bit of a chat.
Well, it just goes to show you, that's what I was just kind of alluding to. It was quite easy points, but it looks like there's a lot of riders here, especially they'll be under team instruction as well. So not really interested in thinking about taking any points, because what was there on offer? 6, 4 and 2 points on the finishing line. If you get yourself in a breakaway throughout this race and get some more points, then you know you could be leading that competition. So it was a little bit of a surprise. Maybe a couple of the smaller teams didn't thought, well, easy points, just take them just in case I get in the breakaway and I've got those points.
Stefan Kruijswijk down the very back of the peloton, the oldest rider in the bike race at 38 years of age. He's double the age of the youngest rider, 2 teenagers in this one. Youngest rider is young Ezra Cowdell from North Carolina in the modern Adventure Pro Cycling team. And that gap's coming down, so the peloton really starting to get their skates on. We're within 87 kilometers of the finish line here.
Hey. Nikomoto, as it's getting hotter.
And it just feels as if they're pretty keen to pare back the advantage of Sylvain Dillier, or is it about positioning for the battles to come when we route our way away from this this wide open boulevard and change direction, the potential changes of direction, the headwinds that will await the riders as they race back towards Liwa. Beckoning at the moment, and Sylvain Dillier looking as if, well, I mean, by his standards, it's a relatively short hit out for him, but nonetheless, he's really had to press on the pedals.
Well, he has, and you just see the car up alongside. He's been given his instruction. He's been given, you know, another bottle, some nutrition as well. So, you know, he just has to concentrate on what he has to do. The gap coming down a little bit now, just over 1 minute. But I think the dangers are on this circuit. We do know that the wind is blowing. That's why we've got a kind of fast stage so far. When we go onto this circuit, you know, on any circuit, you're going to have some crosswinds, and I think, you know, maybe some hidden dangers on this cycle track. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. But for the main reason, I don't think the peloton should be too worried about Silvandile on his own. Still a long way to go, just 86 kilometres, and you do have a predominantly headwind on the way back from the circuit as well.
Ineos Grenadiers, easy to pick out, aren't they, with those orange jerseys and those much brighter colours down below. Samuel Welsford, of course, stage win in Tour Down Under, Criterium champion of Australia. Last season, traditionally it tends to go well in the early season races, so Sam Welsford, I think, will be really up for the finish. He'd not bad up a little ramp to a finish line as well. I seem to remember stage win in Tour of Turkey a few years ago. Proved a happy hunting ground for Sam Welsford, and Ineos Grenadiers will certainly want to keep him as best positioned as they possibly can into that one. Gap already inside a minute for Sylvain Dillier, and a long conflict with the team car. Preben van Hekken in the Alpecin Premier Tech car, just keeping Sylvain Dillier abreast of developments behind. And the bad news is that they're really starting to step on this one. So we head towards the sand dunes of Liwa on the Oasis.
It's kind of a strange one. Gap coming down 55. You had around about 2 minutes. It's coming down under a minute now. No real reason. We're heading out to this this circuit now, which we're going to do 2 laps off, just over 18 kilometres. You know, this has been brought into this race over the last kind of couple of years. Last year, Pogačar tried to kind of animate it a little bit, so it could add a little bit of spice, definitely. But here we see the result, and it was just a rollover, as you can see. Mees gets for Jacob Lola second, De Schutterer in third, and Oxenberg in fourth place there. But Sylvain Dillier, for the moment anyway, will be leading that sprints competition. But I think the main emphasis from the way this stage has been run at the moment is on the stage one, so that the sprinters team's well in control of this. I just don't understand why Sylvain Dillier they kind of brought it back so much at the moment.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem to be any sustained impetus to try and split the field. I mean, it is that the pace is up, but is it? No one seems to be interested in trying to create any significant split. Is it all about positioning as we head towards the bike track? Gap down to 45 seconds. Frustrating, I think, at this point for Sylvain Dillier, but you've got to really admire what he's done to this point, and that's a big question. Look at that, the sand really blowing across. The desert sands describing the direction of the wind, and it's whipped up at 30 kilometers an hour plus. There will be significant moments coming up where the riders are going to be feeling this on one cheek or another.
That is the main problem at the moment, because of the wind direction, and we've got a slight change here in the route. That there's a little bit of nerves. You can see that Team Emirates, UAE Team Emirates, have come up. They're looking after Del Toro, of course. They've got, you know, Adam Yates, who's showing some really good form. But there is that, from the looks of things, this gap coming down 42 seconds now. There's more nerves in the peloton. That's why we're seeing this this kind of race at the fronts. Everybody wants to be at the fronts because they don't want to kind of miss out. They're trying to look after their GC contender and their sprinter, try and make it as easy as possible. So by the looks of things, it's just that added amount of nerves. And yes, of course, everybody wants to go into the
Well, look at this. We got a hint about this literally within the last minute, and that's it confirmed. The jury have decided that due to the strong winds and for safety reasons, they've decided to pare back that lap of the circuit, the bike circuit. So they're not going on to the Tel Morib cycle track. It's quite narrow. It's absolutely beautiful road to ride on your own, but in a large peloton, the race jury have decided that in these particular wind conditions, they've decided to reduce the length of the stage and reduce it significantly by 26 kilometers. That fundamentally means that, well, it's a shorter ride to the finish line from now for Sylvain Dillier and friends, and I suspect that's why this pace and this peloton has picked up. The word has spread through the teams in the cavalcade, and they've transmitted that news to the peloton, and they've decided that they've reduced the distance to go. As we pick up the graphic now, we get a signal that there's probably, at this rate of progress, not much more. An hour and a bit from now, this race will come to a conclusion, and therefore maybe just try and reduce the distance to that breakaway, albeit just a solo rider out front. But I think that's probably the reason that we saw that little bit of an increase in tempo from the peloton.
Possibly, but I think just the wind direction, the wind was kind of buffeting. You can see the sand coming across the road, and there's a little bit more nerves. I think with 55 kilometres now in this kind of slightly shortened stage, we're just talking about these circuits where there could have been a banana skin for one or two riders. I think it could be the right direction, the right thing. From what I've experienced over the last 2 years, it's narrowish. The sand is blowing onto the roads. The way the wind is blowing, they're 100%. You can see the wind still blowing in front. It's causing that kind of haze, that kind of sand haze. And, there were some dangers. So, unfortunately, they introduced this cycle track a couple of years ago. Used it last year as well. Pogacar did try to kind of split it up. It's just safety first and foremost, but there's no reason to bring this rider back anyway, because by the looks of things, Declan, what we're going to do is head out to the circuit, pop at UAE, and come all the way back. Predominantly, he's still in this bit of a kind of cross tailwind, so it is helping him. On the way back, it would be predominantly more of a kind of headwind in the way back, and everybody knows in a headwind it's a lot easier to bring a rider back. So, unfortunately for Sylvain Dillier, well, I say unfortunately. Fortunately, he's got less to go to the finish. He didn't know that, of course, when he went on the attack. This is very much a shortened stage now, from 140 kilometres to 118. But yeah, they've brought him back. But I still think that the peloton, I don't think, would be too worried about Sylvain Dillier. Almost guaranteeing this race he's going to lose over 10 minutes anyway in the general classification because of the two, mountaintop finishes. He's not going to feature there, but definitely for the sprinters teams, they don't want to give him too much. They know how strong he is, but I think under a minute, 46 seconds, 53 kilometres to go, I don't think there's any danger that anybody's thinking that this rider here, as impressive as he is, will stay out there for the final 53 kilometres.
It's been a feature of recent racing, hasn't it? Certainly, start of the season, no surprise really that weather can intervene a little bit, that the race juries have to be alive to the possibilities. But we have seen quite a few decisions and changes. Races neutralised, reduced in length, the routes changed, and I mean, flexibility is the essence of race organisation, isn't it? Race management and College of Commissars as well need to be ever mindful of changing circumstances, and they've reacted well today.
Yeah, when you look at a lot of sports are changing now. Even I follow a little bit of football, and when you look back at some of the old football games where waterlogged parks and there was snow on the ground and they're playing with an orange ball, and you don't get any of that now. There's certain Scottish you know, league games cancelled because of, you know, some water on the park. And days gone past, you had, oh, we got
Right down, and that's the wind, and that's switching around that,
you know
roundabout.
What I was just about to say beforehand, when we see the sand coming across, see the sand on here, that's what caused the crash, right? And that's what you've got on the circuit. I said it over the last couple of years, I've seen that the sand is blown onto the circuit. When you get sand onto the roads, it gets a little bit slippy. That wasn't a severe corner there, but you just hit it at the wrong angle, and sand on the road is very, very slippy. This is the reason why the UCI commissaires have decided that they're a little bit too dangerous.
Yeah, disappointment really for Jean-Christian Cole.
Just watch it here. It's just a little bit of kind of banking over, hit the sand, down you come. It's the first rider.
Oh, right at the front of the bunch. They put their whole team up there. It was really impressive work. Again, further, I think, indication of just how keen they are to show what they're
shot here. Just watch, this just slips.
Oh, front end washes away. You're a passenger then.
Just the sand on the road, that's all it is. Everybody knows, we've seen this in races in Spain sometimes. If the wind blows, you come onto a descent and all of a sudden you'll get that kind of, that bit of dust, sand on the road, bang, nowhere you can go. You hit some of that sand, you're down, and unfortunately,
like
that's what happened to the rider at the front there. And that's what we've got a lot of on the circuit, so that's no real surprise. I think I alluded to earlier in the broadcast that it's the wind blows. It's not as if there's any vehicles on it. It's the, from what I've seen on this cycling circuit, it's floodlit. It looks tremendous and things like that, but the sand does blow onto it. And of course, with that crash happening right from the front, that adds a little bit more nerves now. And I'm pretty sure as a sports director, they'll be saying, guys, you know, keep safe now. Don't take any risks on these corners.
Josh Tarling down amongst the cars at the moment. He's got the kind of watts that will have no problem, you'd imagine, working his way back up and into that main peloton. We did see him on the wrong end of a split, of course, 12 months ago, if memory serves. He was in the red jersey after the time trial, but he was certainly brave enough to try and race across from Group 2 into Group 1. Pelotons.
It's a bit mesmerising, the sand dunes, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just look at it, it's like
red water or something, isn't it? Yeah.
It's hard until you kind of see it in real life. It's hard to explain. It's just like you're in a different world.
Kansas now, says Ilan van Wilder, of the Soudal Quick Step squad. What hopes have they got for the week?
And I think there's no stopping this at all. You know, you build a road through sand dunes. You know, wind blows, it's going to blow the sand across. There's not a lot you can do. And it's okay going in a straight line, but as we know from the circuit, it's kind of twisting up and down. And that's where the danger lies. Unfortunately, we just saw that sand coming on at that roundabout. And of course, on the way out to the circuit and the way back, any sort of kind of corners or roundabouts will be treated with severe caution.
And it's important, isn't it, that we bring the race to these wonderful pieces of infrastructure that have been created in the UAE. And I mean, it is a piece of infrastructure for cyclists, isn't it? So we really do want to see it, but also we need to temper that enthusiasm a little bit by the knowledge that when the wind blows and the conditions are different, we just have to acknowledge that fact and respect the elements. And these riders certainly respecting that fact. And Sylvain Dillier, a little anxious look over his shoulder. More or less straight roads, actually, that they've had all day. So he's never really been out of sight, out of mind, has he? But his advantage pared back significantly. Up this little bit of a drag, he loses a couple of seconds. But I have a feeling, actually, that he's stemmed the flow a little bit. And that he's managing to control this three-quarter minute advantage. And the peloton maybe with, well, fully 48.5 kilometers to go in this truncated stage. They know that they're well in control of it and maybe just don't want to take too many risks right now.
Yeah, I think it all started, didn't it, in the Tour of Qatar, when that race came, and you know, a lot of people were like thinking, there's no spectators, you know, it's just, you know, flat racing, it's, you know, what's the real point, you know what I mean, of this race? And you know, you ask the question of the teams, where would you rather be, out here in you know, nice conditions, some nice crosswind training, and you know, or back in Europe in the freezing rain. So, you know, it was a bit of a spell where, yeah, teams were coming here. A lot of teams were kind of paid, but you know, some teams and riders quite liked coming here and had some good success. And then I can remember commentating in the first Dubai Tour when they were utilising stages, because I think it was later in the year and because it was just too warm. So I think these races, you know, it's good to have them in different parts of the world. And of course, we're open to all weather sport and everything. You have to be prepared to ride over anything at all. And I think for asking the riders, do they want to come here? Of course they do. It's a good racing and good temperatures.
Well, Johnny Milan said today he hoped the wind would blow. I mean, it would make things interesting and stimulating.
We've seen some great battles, and we've seen some punches. I think it was Gruzdev that was disqualified in the past. You know, that's what you come to this part of the world. That's what you know, you're in for. It's good classics training.
You're not going to make your way to the front of the bunch too easily at that rate of progress. Riders spinning out the gear just to stay in the line here, and you can sense the way they're leaning over as well, that wind is playing a role and being challenging. Potential for splits here, but are the roads...
The first part was Lewa was straight. This is, just watch this, take care in this roundabout now. I know it's not acute, but just you have to take a little bit more care. But this road out towards the circuit, it's a little bit of a kind of snaky road, which means that gentle, you know, changes in direction. But again, you'll clearly see there's a lot of teams up for this one, more for safety than anything else. No real danger with Sylvain Daly at 47 seconds. Of course, shortened 46 kilometres ago. This is going to come down to a sprint, and you know, the question is, you know, who can beat last year's winner and possibly the favourite in the peloton? That's Jonathan Milan.
Dillier up another one of these unforgiving drags. Not a mountainous course by any means, but it's just a feeling of the progress being drained away, and just he's wondering whether it's a similar situation in the peloton behind. An anxious look over his shoulder. A few battered and bruised looking riders, including Byron Munton, the South African rider, performed a great distinction actually in the UAE Tour. He was one of those riders for the Modern Adventure Pro Cycling team who were well to the fore. Munton will try and make his way back up front, shrug off that injury, as peloton now a little over half a minute behind, and pretty quickly through to the feed zone behind our lone leader, Sylvain Dillier.
Progress doesn't happen by standing still. It happens when we move forward, together, step by step, mile by mile, empowering a nation, connecting the world, enabling trade, empowering sports.
Kreiswick happy enough to take on a bike. This Melissa bike rider doing one of the few, if the only, yellow-clad riders that is not on the front at the moment. The 38-year-old. Little you can teach him about bike racing. And he's happy enough to tap along in the wheels at the moment. Across the top with that little drag.
Turned himself into, you know, super domestic now, Stephen Kreuzweg. I witnessed it a few times, Tour of Britain a couple of years ago as well. He's just riding on the front like this man does. So, you know, there was a stage there. He was, you know, a big GC contender in the Grand Tours. But over the last few years, you know, if you cannot get up there in the Grand Tour, you have to find another job to do. It's like a football team. There's, you know, positions in all teams, and it's the same in cycling. There's a position. You know, there's riders in teams that possibly never win bike races, but they're essential part of the team in that position. And Stephen Kreuzweg probably may not win another bike race, but you know, he's still essential part of the, you know, of a cog of the team that's riding rather well. And you know, you don't come a GC contender for nothing. So he's been a strong rider in the past, and now an essential part of the you know, the driving force behind that team. So he's realised that he might not be a GC contender over you know, now. So what do? You know, so he's kind of reinvented himself as this kind of super domestic, somebody that can ride on the flats and up hills, and you know, just sacrifice himself for others now.
Yeah, mentally that can be difficult for riders to deal with, to cope with. I mean, you know, the diminishing powers doesn't necessarily mean that you're not of value, but can you maintain the motivation for training when you're...
You have to make these decisions. If you're a successful rider and then you stop becoming successful, well, you're not going to get paid for that position in any team. So you have to kind of try and reinvent yourself, prove to the team that you're an essential part. Okay, there might be a little bit of a pay cut, but you know, if you want to stay in the pro peloton and you can't win bike races anymore, then there is ways of helping others to win bike races.
Del Toro looks happy enough at the moment, as we're live on board with Groupama FDJ rider Johan Jacobs of Switzerland. His fellow countryman out front. And into the final hour of racing here, his advantage sort of holding steady at 3/4 of a minute. Del Toro, his output relatively benign, sort of average of about 250 over the last 15-20 seconds or so. Not nothing, but pretty basic enough and handleable. Can do that all day and all night, a rider of his ability.
For 10-minute choke.
If settled in, the next major appointment is the intermediate sprint. That will be the signal for them to head for home with 26.1 kilometers of the day remaining. Dillier first to reach this section where the sands certainly are blowing with increasing intensity across the tarmac. We've seen this in the past, and it just we've already seen today just how much attention and focus and caution and respect the riders need to pay to that particular section. Look at the peloton through in short order. Behind with altogether greater aggression and intensity, and everybody wants to own it into this roundabout. This is one of these sketchy little scenarios where...
Why race into it?
Yeah.
Why not just have a little bit of a truce and go, guys, we've seen what happened before. We don't want that happening again. So they're all pushing to get into this, you know, towards the fronts. So they're all a little bit kind of nervy, these kind of roundabouts. And then they ease up. But why don't they ease up, get into the roundabout?
Yeah. Tudor Pro Cycling's rider that won that little race into that one, Alvaras Makutas, the Lithuanian national champion. as you say, immediately eased up. Tudor Pro Cycling squad have Michael Storer among their numbers, 6th overall in this race back in 2024. Climbs well, does the Australian. Often goes well at this time of year. For today, I'll have to see whether Robin Foidevaux can replicate his string of top 10 finishing performances in the recent UAE Tour in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the Swiss team happy enough to tap along in the wheels in the peloton, or at least try and control the pace in the peloton. And their compatriots with the Alpecin Premier Tech squad, Sylvain Dillier, looking increasingly fatigued and anxious, and well, it's a great old hit out, you have to say. He's going to take us down inside 40 to go, still at the head of the race. And to me, fascinating that no other riders were tempted to try and join him. I suppose the very fact that it was just one rider clear of the field, albeit a rider as strong as Sylvain Dillier, meant that the peloton were utterly relaxed and content collectively to allow that breakaway gain.
Well, they're just passing the
3/4 minutes.
Second sprint now. It'll be in the left of the road and the way back. So I think Sylvain Dillier would love to do a U-turn as quick as possible. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the markings. So that'll be the sprint in the way back. I think maybe in the back of his mind, just try and stay away for that. Of course, you know, we do have bonus seconds on that, which could come in handy for some riders, but for the moment anyway, everybody seems to be a little nervy, not too worried about Sylvain Dillier. They just want to be as safe as possible.
UAE Team Emirates squad are, of course, the defending champions of this race. Tadej Pogacar taking the win 12 months ago ahead of Julia Ciccone and Pello Bilbao. Pello Bilbao not here this week, who's 3-time third-place finisher in this event. Heading into the Morib Dune cycle track part of the world, and look at that, the average speed 52.7 kilometers an hour, and most of it from Sylvain Dillier. So that's a solo time trial for him at over 50 kilometers an hour, albeit of course in with mostly a tailwind. Nonetheless, he's able to tiptoe his way through this second. Just the increased anxiety for the riders as they see that sand on the surface of the tarmac. I mean, how much extra tension does it create for the riders? And it's that extra tension can have an effect on the way the grip that the bike has.
Yeah, you can clearly say that you know, they're really worried about it. But why race into this point? You know, why not you know, feather it back a little bit? You see some of the modern adventure guys down towards the back now. They've learned their lesson. But yeah, it's roundabouts like this and the sand on the roads, and it gets a little bit slippy. And you just want to make sure, you know, you give these corners a little bit of caution.
Safely negotiating that one. Let's see it again on the way back, and not too long from now. Second intermediate sprint will, of course, herald our return to the Liwa Palace. And it will be fascinating to see how much the wind direction change will affect the pace of the riders, will affect the pace, of course, of Sylvain Dillier. Lack of ambition here to be at the front. The Lotto Intermarché squad. They have plenty of interest in this event this week. They've got Leonard van Eetveld too, of course, another former winner. 3 former winners in this event this year. Won at the event back in 2024. It was 11th last year. And he was pointing out the difference in the race fundamentally with the time trial on day 2, and then with, of course, that new climb on day 3, which looks to be all the more challenging indeed than Jebel Jais, the climb that it's replacing. Sylvain Dillier already with 1 haul of points for the intermediate sprints classification in the bag. Will he hang on for another 10k with just over half a minute advantage? It's kind of yo-yoing, isn't it, between just north of half a minute and just south of 3/4 of a minute. Up every drag he loses a bucket full of seconds, but the sort of yo-yo effect of the peloton gaining as he races up the drag and then losing it themselves as he plummets down the next little descent means the sort of net advantage is sitting at around that 3/4 of a minute mark. Luca Mezgets, by the way, was second across the line at that first intermediate sprint. Deschoitenaire for the Lotto Intermarché squad. Ineos Grenadiers. Peter Oxenberg, their rider, the Danish rider, also scoring points, albeit without really trying, and more about trying to position their teammates at the front as they went past the Liwa Palace on that occasion. Still in command, but for how much longer? Some pretty impressive roundabouts hereabouts.
This is the cycle track now, so I think it'll be a case of just getting to the entrance roundabout and returning.
Yeah, up to the Tel Morib cycling track. Yeah, disappointment not really to not be able to go around it. Those speed bumps, by the way, they're absolutely vicious in a car. Oddly, they're a little bit easier on a bike, aren't they? But still, you've just got to semi-bunny hop over them just to make sure the front end goes light and you carry the back end over without too much difficulty.
No, it's an impressive circuit that they've got here. It's rolling up and down, twisting and turning a little bit narrow in places, but it's just unfortunate, you know, it's open to the elements and especially the sand with the wind blowing. It's blowing a lot of sand onto the route.
Yeah, it's not just the UAE Tour that plays host to competitions here. They have races for local riders as well, and for other sporting events. Plenty of climbs and descents around the iconic Tel Morib dunes. Peloton's not for hanging around now. Well, Sylvain Dillier is up this drag, and he knows it's not long before the sort of makes the return route. And the return route comes with it, okay, a little bit of the gradient will ease for a while, but of course the negative situation is that he'd be into a headwind. So it really is a forlorn hope, I think, for Sylvain Dillier today. Nonetheless, he is a sort of an irrepressible spirit, and he will continue to press on all the way to the last possible moment.
I don't think he's been holding anything back. Some haven't, but then we've got another kind of change of direction here, so yeah, I think it's the peloton is still that little bit nervy. I cannot see from the way this race is, or this stage is shaped right from the start, it's sprint, bunch sprint written all over it. And I think for the GC contenders, we covered that, they're quite happy. they don't want to think. They've not got the mind of Pogacar last year in the circuit that he thinks, right, I'm try and split this up, try and animate it. I don't think anybody would want to try and do that. Maybe Del Toro, but now that we're not doing the circuit, I think for the majority of the riders now, it's just a case of get to the finish. For the sprinters, of course, they've got a job to do.
If the bunch wants it, the bunch is going to get it. It's as simple as that, and that's the collective wish. And well, frustrating it as it is for Sylvain Dilly, particularly frustrating really that he's not going to be available to take, it would appear at any rate, unless we have a change in heart and a change of attitude from that main peloton very quickly indeed. It doesn't look as if he's going to be clear of the field coming to that second and final intermediate sprint of the day. Nonetheless, the Maglia Nera will still be potentially available to him. If we've got two completely separate charts of point scorers from the first and second sprints, it'll go down to position on the stage, which effectively will be position in general classification. So it's GC, I think, that is the final arbiter.
That's what I was saying earlier on. Okay, you know, we saw the result of the Mies gets. I don't think he'll be too interested to shout in our Lotto Intermarché. Well, he's a bit of a sprinter. You know, he could get up there and get some points if he takes the 8 in the way back, even Peter Oxenberg. But that's what I was saying, it was easy takings to take second, third or fourth, and in the way back, okay, you might have to kind of battle it out with maybe a couple of the GC guys, but the GC guys, if you've got a bit of a sprint, I think that was just maybe for modern adventure pro cycling, I think maybe they made a mistake there. If I was in the car, I would say, look, just easy enough, just take the points. You never know, and you could be getting a jersey at the end of the stage.
Gap, let him open a gap. Well,
hello, you're very welcome to the only World Tour race in the Middle East for men, and it is the 8th edition of the UAE Tour Stage 1, shortest road race stage of the week, potentially amongst the most explosive as well, as we make our way over a build 144 kilometers all the way to Liwa Palace and the ramp up to the finish line. 145 riders signing on for duty today. Well, 12 months ago, this event delivering wonderful, epic scenery, spectacular racing. And the trip to the Liwa Palace and the Moree Dunes ultimately producing a sensational sprint success for that man, Jonathan Milan, the springboard to a sensational campaign in 2025. Alu Dariat playing host to the time trial. Great day out for Josh Tarling 12 months ago. It's on hand to see if he can do it again in 2026. And the road rose inevitably was the world champion, Tadej Pogacar, imperious and in command. Milan and Philipsen going head-to-head in the sprints in the 2025 edition. Spectacular and challenging, and what an array of sprint talent we have. The European champion Tim Merlier delivering his usual sprint success in UAE Tour. And here in command, Johnny Milan in green, as they lift it up to Tadej Pogacar on the final assault. This year, this is what is in prospect in the first day of racing for many of the riders, of course, in 2026. Some will have had plenty of racing, some will have had a little, and quite a few indeed are pinning on a race number for the first time in 2026 today. Here's what the plan was today as the riders make their way out of Madinat Zayed Majlis. Stage entirely in the desert, west of Abu Dhabi, the capital of this region, and indeed the capital of the United Arab Emirates, out into Abu Dhabi Desert, Al Dhafra region to be specific, as we head up and into the dunes of Morib. 2 intermediate sprints along the way, the second of those paying bonus seconds towards the general classification. And then we make our way back towards Liwa. A little left turn takes us a kilometre ramp up to Liwa Palace. And it's a repeat of last year's stage, which produced a sensational Stage 1 success for Jonathan Milan. Can he repeat the alchemy in 26? At Stage 1, and the wind has blown today, I can tell you. Blown with great significance, ultimately, or initially, to the great assistance of the riders. "21 teams in total reporting for duty today, 145 riders, and Isaac Del Toro and Remco Evenepoel getting plenty of attention. Fabio Jakobsen among those as well, looking for a return to form. The Groupama FDJ squad have the likes of David Gaudu, who's gone well in this race in the past, and victorious. Movistar and others looking to challenge Tiberi. We'll watch out to see how he can perform. Nairo Quintana trying to roll back the years for Sudal Quick-Step squad, also reporting with a mixed group of challengers. The Ineos Grenadiers squad, Welsford for the sprints. The Lotto Intermarché squad, Leonard van Eitveld, winner back in 2024. And just outside the top 10 12 months ago. All eyes on Jonathan Milan today. Simona Consoni there to assist him all the way to the finish line. The Mexican champion, Isaac Del Toro, representing the interests of the local squad, UAE Team Emirates XRG. And of course, all eyes on Remco Evenepoel, the 2023 winner. And he'd do it again, this time in the colours of Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe.
What's the feeling of coming back to the UAE Tour, a race you have won before?
Yeah, pretty happy, excited to be here again. It's been a while, and a bit of a new parcours. So also this year is individual time trial. The year I won was TTT, so a lot of new things to discover this year.
Today, is it crucial for GC? Can something happen?
I think crucial, maybe not really, but of course I need to try to take a lot of advantage today. So we will see how it goes, and in the end, I will just do my best as always and try to win it.
Normally, you like this kind of slightly uphill finish?
Yeah, this finish is good for me. It's a little kick, It's really good for me. The most important is take the good position and start no early because it's long. The final is long.
How important is it for your team, the local team, stage 1 of the UAE Tour?
Yeah, it's most important for. I think today is a big day for also the GC because I don't know the echelons, the crosswind, but yeah, the team is motivated and my team is really motivated and Isaac is really strong and then only the team is only I need only stay in the front and full gas.
You already have one victory this year, and that was against Jonathan Milan. How good is it for your confidence?
Yeah, for sure. I'm super happy about my victory. I know that I have 3 opportunities during this UAE Tour. So if it's not today, probably the next day I have 3 opportunities to do a good battle with him, and I will try for sure.
So you definitely consider today an opportunity?
We will see. On the car and on the paper, it's not my stage. But you know, the legs decide. I can decide before the finish.
You have won that stage last year. How much of an advantage is it for winning again today?
Yeah, last year was a bit. Of course, it was the same stage, but the condition of the window was a bit less demanding. I mean. Of course, it was a bit stressful as a stage, but was not as windy as today. Today, I think, will be a bit stressful from the start. Everyone will want to stay in the front and to stay in the safest possible. So we will have to be careful in the parkour, in the loops that we will do after 70k. So yeah, it will be interesting today.
Jonathan Milan, 2 wins, 2nd place on the points classification at the recent Lula Tour in Saudi Arabia. Similar desert terrain to that which he'll experience today. So the Italian preeminent force in world sprinting from 2025 continuing as he left off. These the early stages. They took a little while before Sylvain Dellier eventually was tempted out of the peloton, and the Swiss breakaway specialist racing through the intermediate sprint. First of 2 during the day. Maximum lead approaching 2 minutes for the Swiss veteran, but I can tell you that has been pared back in recent times. Other news to tell you about as well. They've reduced the length of the stage. They're not going around the Tel Marib cycle track. Just safety in mind for the race jury, and Sylvain Dellier has been dragged back approaching the intermediate sprint, where we have a bit of a contest, and looked as if Johnny Milan just heading up to take those 3 bonus seconds, and also the points towards the intermediate, and indeed points classifications. That one, though, I think as much about protecting the interests of others, and interesting to see that he went up for that one. So Jonathan Milan will, as a little dress rehearsal really for what he's going to try and achieve when they race down through the remaining 24.1 kilometers, significantly truncated. 26 kilometers paired off the race distance today by the race jury, just feeling that racing around that circuit in these windy conditions, very challenging. It's been north of 30 kilometers an hour for much of the day. That's been mostly a tail or a tail crosswinds. No significant splits in the main peloton, but plenty of situations and extended periods where we've had numerous teams forcing the pace to ensure that they've maintained position close to the front, kept their sprinters and general classification riders into prime position. So it's settled in a little bit as we're heading for home into the headwind. So characteristic of this stage changing a little as we head into the final half hour of racing here on stage 1 of UAE Tour. I'm delighted to say I've been joined once again to run the rule over the riders throughout the week by double British national road race champion Brian Smith, who's looking forward to this one, I think. And Brian, it's been an interesting day already so far. Plenty of talking points around the jury having to make that decision, and quickly making that decision, indeed communicating it to the teams, and that's changed the character of how this stage has run. But we're Gruppo Compato now. The group is all together into the final 24 kilometers of racing, and what's likely to unfold all the way to Leo Palace today?
Bunch finish, I think that was suggested right from the start as well. Okay, there was a little bit of worry about the potential kind of crosswinds. When we go into this circuit, everybody knows on a circuit, when the wind is blowing, we've seen throughout this stage that the sand has been blown onto the roads, and they had to show a little bit kind of caution. We had a crash from a couple of riders from Modern Adventure into a roundabout first and came out last. Unfortunately, they're back in the peloton okay, but I think the decision by the jury on that circuit there, it's narrowation parts. The wind is blowing across it in certain areas, blowing the sand across, and it was just a little bit too dangerous. But I think a bunch finish is in mind there. But I tell you what, looking at Jonathan Milan taking that second sprint, of course, the winner's going to take the red jersey. That's not what he's thinking of. The 3 seconds, he's not really thinking of that either. What he could do a decent enough time trial. He'll have potentially, if he wins the stage, he'll have 13 seconds in front of most of the other kind of GC contenders. But I think he's already looking at the points jersey.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a really rare thing that a sprinter will focus on, in a one-week stage race, they'll focus on the points jersey. They think that it more or less follows if you get the stage wins. But maybe he's just thinking, these are cheap points, I'll just take these one. That was an absolutely fascinating thing, and great that he's respecting that points jersey, actually. So the green jersey is clearly a target for the man who won it last year and is looking to try and repeat that alchemy. Won this first stage last year.
But one thing I will flag up as well, that I'm just looking at who's going to be the GC contender for the likes of Visma Lisa Bike. They've got some good riders in here. It was interesting, because we now have the sprint details in here. But Ben Tullet took second to Milan there. That's 2 seconds. Van Etveld for Lotto Intermarché taking third in that sprint, taking 1 point. Luke Plapp was trying to go for, he just misses out. 3, 2 and 1 for the first 3 riders, and of course the first 4 riders getting points towards the sprint points, and also the points. So Milan going for the points, but interestingly enough, Ben Tullet and Van Etveld going for the minor seconds there.
Yeah, for the Lidl Trek squad, they've got Derek G, who's now part of their camp these days, the Canadian National Road Race Champion. There's confirmation. Jonathan Milan having scored 8 points towards the intermediate and points classifications, but 3 bonus seconds there for GC. Ben Tullet, Leonard Van Etveld going for GC. Luke Plapp just missing out, scoring a point, but no bonus seconds on offer for him. So interesting too that Leonard Van Etveld, mindful of, I suppose, the opportunity to leak a bit of time as well in the time trial tomorrow against the man on screen, number 1.
Well, it's not the first time in the race that Van Etveld is looking at bonuses. Was it a couple of years ago? He was up there chasing bonuses because he knows that seconds are going to count. The interesting factor now is this new climb. This new climb is brutal.
Tell us a bit about that. So we've got stage 3. We've got a new climb. They've decided to do away with Jebel Jais and replace it with the Mulgra climb. And the bare statistics take a bit of eye-watering reading, don't they? Because it is complicated looking. It's much steeper.
Oh, it's probably the hardest climb that we've had ever in this race.
Indeed, harder than Jebel Hafid, which is our stage 6 climb.
Well, that was like a reduced group sprint at the top there. But the climb that they've introduced here is absolutely brutal in my mind. The averages that we're talking about here of 8.6%, 17% maximum is 14.9 kilometers in length, and I have to say this is the hardest climb ever in this race.
The last 8 kilometers are 12%. I mean, it's significantly harder than Jebel Hafid that we will see, which is the sort of traditional Queen stage climb that they have on this.
Jebel Jais, we saw this. It was a mountaintop finish, but it's a bit benign. They went up at that pace. There seemed to be about 20 or 30 riders in the last kilometre, and it used to be a kind of sprint to the finish.
Big ring climb these days.
This is going to be completely different, and riders are going to have to look at what they do next. But interestingly enough, there's a few riders that have come in here that we don't know what their form is really like. For the first time we've seen Uno X here, the whole team have never raced this race before. So they're here, so they're learning. But for UAE team Emirates on the right-hand side here, they're here to win with Del Toro. They've got Adam Yates, who looked quite good. I watched him in Oman last week, and he looked strong. Of course, they've come here with a strong team, thinking of winning the race again. Very important for them. But, you know, today, so far, what we can tell is no one wanted to go on the breakaway. Sylvain Daly was the only person who took it on. I don't think he was too worried about getting the intermediate sprints. He took the first one. Jonathan Milan took the second one. They're both in 8 points. Whoever finishes across the line first will take that black jersey. That's not in their mind for Milan. He's thinking more of the points jersey. It's always in this race quite a contested competition. I think I feel a wee bit. I'd love to see Phillips in the middle there here, but they're not. But we have got some other sprinters here. I think Milan is definitely the favourite for today's stage. Yeah, but the overall would be interesting, and the fact that Evenepoel never even tried to go up for the 2 and the 1 seconds there. For Van Etveld, he's done it in the past. He knows he has to take seconds. Ben Tullet taking some seconds, so it's already
surprised to see Evenepoel not showing a little bit of interest, because it's not like he's got much else to do today apart from staying out of trouble, so he could have invested a few joules of energy in that one.
He could have done, and he has done in the past, looked at bonus seconds, but I just think with the time trial tomorrow and the 2 uphill finishes, what he's shown so far this year, he looks as if he's enjoying being part of that Red Bull team.
Yeah, he's on absolutely red-hot form. That's Remco Evenepoel. He is the strong favourite for honours in this event. It's a 7-stage event. Our 3rd stage is the assault on Jebel Mobra coming up on Wednesday. That's something to behold and to look forward to. It is also almost by just 1 kilometre less the longest stage of the week. Second longest stage basically, but only by 1 kilometre. That Jebel Mobra stage is going to be particularly challenging and demanding for the riders. Before they get to that, they're going to have to go all in tomorrow's shortest stage of the week. It's the Al Hudayriyat individual time trial stage, 12.2 kilometres, as Remco Evenepoel mentioned when he took his victory back in 2023. It was a team time trial. That was part of the equation for him on that occasion. To remember Tim Merlier making a big investment to keep him in contention in the road racing that preceded and ran around that one. But yeah, it's Remco Evenepoel now in the colours of Red Bull, Bora Hansgrohe, and on flying form. 6 wins so far this year. It's been extraordinary stuff, really. He's got a stage race overall, a couple of stage wins, and of course 3 one-day wins, all coming in Spain. Those early season races, and Remco Evenepoel has arrived on fire, you would have to say, into the Middle East. Speaking of which, the heat map suggests that Jonathan Milan's staying out of trouble as much of the day as he possibly can.
Yeah, I think for Evenepoel, he'll be thinking in the long game, trying to win this again. And I think looking at that team, they've got a man that's, I think, can battle it out with Jonathan Milan. He did it last year. He finished 2nd after the disqualification of Phillips, is Fisher Black. So, you know, he's a rider that can do rather well. So they've got a very strong team. By the looks of things, Evenepoel is quite happy. It's predominantly a bit of more of a headwind. Most of the stage today has been a kind of cross tailwind. It's going to cross headwinds all the way down towards the finishing line. Okay, when we come back into Liwa, when we start heading, I ran it this morning, we've got a little bit of a kind of crosswinds before we go up, but it's quite daunting, this finish. Last year we saw Pogacar, he went quite early. You come round the corner to the finishing line, and you're talking about, what, 1,500 metres? And then you get to the last kilometre, and it just slowly drags all the way up to the finishing line.
Yeah, literally under the kite is where it starts to ramp up to 6%, then to 4%, then I think it's 7% for a little bit, all the way to the line from there. So it actually grips a little bit more as you're going up to that finish line. Bit of a crosswind as well, which is going to play a role. It's a wide open road, and you can see the finish. It's an absolutely ramrod straight road, and it's so tempting. And I think
that's the word, tempting.
Yeah. To hit out early, and you know, it just looks like you're closer to the finish than you actually are.
Yeah, you can see it. I made a comment. It's just we've got a decent enough crowd building at the moment, but that is a sort of, you know, put that in the Tour de France, that sort with the, you know, thousands and thousands of people there. That would have been a tremendous finish, but yeah, it's quite spectacular. And for me, Milan, the way he started this year, it has to be the favourite. There's other riders, of course. Welsford has, you know, a couple of decent wins. Not too sure this is sort of finished for him, though. There's a few other riders in here that they will have to conjure with, the sprinters and things like that, but I think it's a case of Milan, good form already, won this stage last year, has to be the favourite today.
Is to have and hold if he can reproduce the kind of form that we've seen from him in 2025 and indeed so far in 2026. But it looks like a club run at the moment. I can tell you what, the first hour of racing, indeed the first 2 hours of racing, absolutely flat chat. We were north of 55 kilometres an hour for the first half an hour of racing, and that maintained indeed with Sylvain Dillier out front and racing at speeds of approaching 70 kilometres an hour, you know, with that tailwind. Well, they've headed back into the headwinds. There seems to be an inevitability, not just about the, I mean, that would immediately slow the pace a little bit anyway, and the very fact of it tactically means that the teams just feel that this is not worth making a huge investment of effort. I suppose the flip side of that is that there are lots and lots of riders tucked into the slipstream at the moment. They're getting the advantage. They're not making an effort. A lot of riders are going to believe that they can make a contribution to their team, or maybe even personally contend for victory today. So it's a late start to the lead out tends to make for busy finales.
The big worry I've got in a stage like this, I think Jonathan Milan said last year, was a bit sedate. It was a majority of the headwinds out to Liwa, and it was kind of fast finish. But today's quite the opposite. It's been a fast race so far. You can see that the way that the sand has been blown over the road from the helicopter shots there, that it's coming slightly from the left-hand side, blown across the road, predominantly headwinds. When you get it this easy, because I've been in races like this since, it comes very, very late. You know, you're just stuck in a bunch, and then all of a sudden it's like last 5Ks full on. And you know, these riders have been riding at a considerable amount of rate of knots so far this stage. We've already mentioned the sort of speeds, and all of a sudden it's pared back, and your legs are like starting to not seize up, but like different sensations, you know, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to go again. And yeah, it's not something you can really kind of train for too much. You have to kind of you take it on, but
sometimes it's worse, isn't it, that you ease off. It
takes you a bit of time to get back into it again, get up to speed, because they've been spinning big gears, they've been going super fast. Now they're slowing up a lot. But the big danger for me is the distance of the stage has been pared back to 118 kilometres. We've not seen any kind of crosswinds as such. And I think this, and I think you mentioned already, Declan, that there's quite a lot of fresh riders left now, and we know nowadays that there's no one dominant lead-out train. There's a few now, and in this peloton today, there'll be 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 teams that are going to be challenging each other position. I don't think positioning, until we get to the last kilometre, I don't think it's about position. We heard from Milano, he knows he's on his own. He has to look at others and be put in a good position, but I still think that it's not essential you get top 6 going into the last kilometre because of the nature of the finish. So I really do think that there are opportunities, but you have to add into the factor as well, this is a hard finish. There'll be riders sitting up, there'll be splits in the peloton, so you have to be there if you're a GC contender, because although Evenepoel never went for the bonus seconds there, but you could quite easily lose 10 seconds in this finish if you sit up.
Yeah, it's the kind of finish, isn't it, that you will see riders, I mean, kind of a mix of GC riders trying to maintain position, not lose, and maybe just pinch a top 3 and bonus seconds that might go with it. I mean, I'm looking at last year's results, and fascinatingly enough, well, eventually, third across the line, eventually adjudged to have finished second was Finn Fisher-Black. I mean, he's a rider that is on decent form, second on a stage of Tour Down Under. Cut a sight on screen of Anders Halland Johansson as well. He's a rider who'll contest for the GC. We've seen him perform with great distinction in the Tour de France last July, and Anders Halland Johansson for the Uno X squad. We've seen him in the Tour of Norway in races like that with really punchy finishes up against the likes of Ethan Hayter, and come up with decent results in the past as well.
Well, I said to you from the start, Declan, that maybe 2 or 3 years ago that Ethan Hayter, this would be a finish for him. He seems to be missing a little bit. Another rider, Gerben Tyson, as well, now riding for Alpecin Premier Tech. A rider that is, you know, over the last year hasn't produced the kind of goods as well, what she was doing a couple of years ago. So, yeah, there's a few riders in here with question marks. And I think Ethan Hayter said right from the start, he got a lot wrong last year and he wants to put it right this year, and why not try it today?
Yeah, he talked about nutrition and various other key metrics and key performance metrics that need to be minded and looked after, and with a new focus and attention. Let's see if he manages to put it together nicely. Got a sight as well of Sam Welsford from our on-bike camera there a moment ago as well. He's on fine form with a stage win in Tour Down Under. Always comes into the early season. Can he get up that, going well, can he get up that ramp? Remains to be seen.
So look at that start. The most successful 10 for Belgium and 7 for Slovenia. Is that just one rider?
Well, Slovenia's only one rider, I think. Yeah, that's Tadej Pogacar, yeah. I wonder, is it? Yeah, got to get on that one. Tim Merlier, certainly the dominant puppy amongst the Belgians that have won stage honours in this event. Remco Evenepoel has performed with great distinction. Lennart van Eetvelt gets up the long climbs well. A short ramp to the finish line today. He'll want to make sure he's on the right side of any split should any GC contenders manage to infiltrate the top 10. But Lennart van Eetvelt taking care of business with a nice haul of 1 bonus second at the second intermediate sprint today. And Ben Tullett not too far from here. He's in the yellow jersey, yeah, up towards the front of those riders for the Visma Lease bike squad. Young British rider taking 2 useful bonus seconds. He'll go hunting again on the run to the line, and it's always a delicious mix, isn't it, when you get sprinters and climbers in the same sprint finish. I mean, to design a finish like that it's
well, a couple of years ago Merlier won here, but it wasn't the same finish. And then last year was the first time we came here, and we saw Pogacar try to kind of light it up a little bit too early. When I first saw this finish, I thought, wow, this is going to really hurt the sprinters, and it did. I think Milan said he'd never gone so deep in or hard in a sprint before. He's going to have to do it all again, and if you want to beat him, then you know you're going to have. If we can look at the other sprinters, because we're getting 14 kilometres to go now. I cannot see anybody that has got the form and can go toe to toe with them. You know, we're talking about, you know, Ethan Vernon of NSN. He's very capable. He's of riding well. Casper Van Uden as well, another rider for Picnic Post NL. Blickera, who's already got for Uno X, already got a win this year. Milano's always there and abouts. We know that Welsford. I just think this might be a little bit too hard for Welsford. And then we're looking at, you know, other runners. I think, and dare I say it, this is possibly the weakest sprint field we've ever had in the UAE Team Emirates over the years, because normally we come here, we've got a lot of top sprinters, they all come here. But I think loaded wise in the general classification, I think it's, you know, probably one of the best that we've got in general classification. So they've gone kind of GC more than kind of sprint types. I think the standout for me has to be Jonathan Milan, but who else, who in your book can go up against him in this race?
Well, Tadej Pogacar has 6 wins.
He's only had 6, he's not 7, is it?
Could go into the victory books for that one. Tim Merlier, as you can see, 7 wins for the Belgian star. He's not present, of course, injured and coming back into the season. Wish him well in his plans for 2026. But Jonathan Milan is certainly making hay at the moment, and Italian star starting the season as he finished last year after his stage success in Giro d'Italia and Tour de France to go with his victories early in the season, including success at the UAE Tour. Other names to conjure with, we've mentioned Gerben Thijssen for Alpecin Premier Tech. I'd be certainly interested to see as well how the Belgian riders, fellow Belgian Sam de Haas, gets on for the Alpecin Premier Tech squad today. They're out front with Sylvain Dillier. I think is destined to wear that black jersey at the end of the day. Even if Jonathan Milan wins the stage, he'll lead that category, but he'll have other jersey to wear, so it will be for Dillier to wear tomorrow. Ethan Vernon for the NSN cycling team, as you've mentioned, stage win at Tour Down Under, second in the prologue there as well. He can sustain an effort for a long period of time, huge watts for more than a minute, and that could be key actually, and is exactly the sort of finish, exactly the sort of ability that will carry you up to the finish at this Liwa Palace where we're heading today.
Sandcastle.
Yeah, that took a little while, a few buckets and spades required for that one. And it doesn't take huge elevation to give you a panoramic view over the relatively low elevation hereabouts. Close thing to a little bit of a climb in these final 15 kilometers. Still, it's promenade pace for the riders, so we can take a moment to think about who's on form this week. Daniel Skirl, of course, for the Bahrain Victorious, surprised everyone really with coming up with a nice second place on the stage of Alula Tour, sort of representing on that occasion for Phil Bauhaus and Bahrain Victorious. So we'll see how he gets on. He's got Nikias Arndt as well, Arndt, the German veteran, so they've got potential combination to get themselves organised.
Malacelli of Astana.
He's screaming at the moment, isn't he? Absolutely flying.
Yeah, but we had an interview from him earlier on today, and he said that's probably not a stage for me.
Yeah. Mentally, sometimes it's hard to sort of coax your sprinter, but yeah, he did take it absolutely fabulous. I mean, and pinched one from Jonathan Milan at the Alula Tour, and the Astana squad have a lot of strength and depth, haven't they? They've got Malacelli also gone off, took a stage win in Tour of Turkey, similar terrain last year. They've got Sergio Higuita in flying form on the climbs. Harold Martin Lopez as well, the Ecuadorian rider, is going to be a great support in the mountains for that XDS Astana squad who are flying. Yeah, Uno X Mobility. Ordinarily for the sprint you look towards Ireland Blikra, but I can make a case, I think, for them protecting Anders Halland Johansson, their overall contender. Might just be able to sprint up the final ramp to produce something special. Similarly for the UAE Team Emirates XRG squad, all eyes on Isaac Del Toro and of course Adam Yates, former winner, the latter named rider, the only one, the only rider from Berry I think in the World Tour these days, following the departure of his brother. Surprising departure really from World Tour action, but the UAE squad have Adam Yates and Isaac Del Toro to protect for GC, but also Juan Sebastian Molano, former stage winner in this race. Himself is on pretty good form at the moment. There's the roll of honour of this particular event in its 8th edition this year. And the standout rider so far, Tadej Pogacar. 3 victories, second back to Adam Yates back in 2020. I think he would suggest that he might have actually got the win, but that particular event was reduced in length as a result of the onset of COVID. It was their first moment when the pandemic started to hit and affected pro cycling. And now Josh Tarling staying safe towards the front of the bunch, not too much in the way of watts. He'll have a lot more watts to distribute out on Al Hudairi at Thailand tomorrow. Sam Welsford's the rider they're going to try and coax into perfect and prime position at the top of the climb today. And Uno X is moving into position, happy enough to take command. Team Picnic Post and It's an interesting one for them, haven't they? They've got Fabio Jakobsen, who's searching for the form of a few years ago, really struggling just to find it as yet, but looked quite good, you have to say. Made the split in the crosswinds, suggesting that there's a decent amount of power there. Fabio Jakobsen, will he be able to display the sprint of old, or will it be up to Casper van Uden, stage winner in Giro d'Italia in 2025 for the Team Picnic Post and L squad? He was 8th on a stage at Tour Down Under in Australia last month.
It would be nice to see Jakobsen back. He had a horrendous crash, as everybody knows, and he came back to winning ways not long after that. But over the kind of last year, he's just been missing a little bit. Wasn't that long ago he was European champion as well, but from what I saw earlier, he definitely has the form. When it comes to sprints, he's just not quite there yet, and I would possibly go for Casper van Uden before Jakobsen 100% today, and I think that's the way that the team will look at this one. It's going to be a slightly different sprint to we had last year. Last year, if you can remember, there wasn't too much right side. There wasn't much of a now a possible finish. But for the last 1500 metres, the wind is going from the right hand side. That means that everybody will be on the left hand side, and the last thing you want to do is get locked in the rear side.
Yeah, and good company. Secret's probably side the